Welcome to the Cubicle Liberation Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Fletch.
And this podcast is all about where we show you real world strategies from people just like you who have escaped their day job. And in this video, we're going to talk about Fletch's Cubicle Liberation story, or liberation story in general, and David's Cubicle Liberation story. So keep listening to hear more. All right, so before we do that, let's get into some basics. We will have guests on sometimes, but most of the time you'll be hearing the wonderful voices of Fletch and me, and we'll expect to publish about at least once per week. So let's just jump right into Fletch. Why don't you start, Fletch, kind of at the beginning of your journey, or your anything where you started off? How did your life go, before you were forced to work certain jobs, and then move into before you move into how you got liberated?
Yeah, no, for sure, David. I think each of us have a different path we've walked, and mine really, most of my life, my younger life, was structured around being an athlete. Right, I grew up in the Midwest in Missouri, which is why I mispronounce it, and was really looking at being a professional football player. Was on track to do that. I'm 6'4", 220. I'm playing at a D1 university, and wound up talking to two scouts who were out for our senior day, and I didn't care about getting drafted. I just wanted to play in the pros. So I was like, hey, what's it like to get, in the pros if I want to go? I don't care about draft, because I had a bunch of injuries. My stats weren't there. I wound up just kind of going the route of I just want to get on the practice squad. I know that doesn't pay much, but, as soon as I get on the field, I'm sure I'm going to be able to show you guys what you want to see to get some game time. And they were like, dude, absolutely. You're the size we want to see. You've got the athletic ability, and you've got the right attitude. So, however this season goes, we'll obviously, keep tabs on what things turn out to be. But once it's over, the season's over, come find us again, and we'll make.
This was after college,
or going into my my fifth year of college.
And so this was a discussion between you and a scout.
Yeah, and two scouts, one from the Washington Redskins and one from the Dallas Cowboys. So
cool. Okay, please continue. Sorry.
No, that's it's good. Kind of the reason I went all the way back here is because I had kind of two liberation stories. I'll keep them both as relatable and kind of short as I can, so that we don't drag this out too much. But the first one wound up being kind of like a reset overall, and then from there I did wind up in a cubicle, which was a kind of a weird little story that I'll get into. And then my actual cubicle liberation story is more like an attic liberation story. You know what I'm talking about there, Dave.
Yeah, I do. I've heard the whole story.
Yeah, who knows a little bit about me probably knows what I'm talking about, but I'll save that as a little teaser when we get into it. But anyway, what wound up happening about 2 days after that is I had a friend of mine during practice on the field who was about 10 or 12 feet away from me take a hit to his head, and got up, was kind of stumbling around, and started crying, and died. And it really shook me up and the rest of the team up, and kind of left us all in a little bit of a fog and a haze. And I kind of attribute that, as well as probably some underlying things that were going on, with the fact that a couple days after his death, I wound up catastrophically breaking my leg and dislocating a bunch of stuff in my left leg, my lower leg, at practice, and wound up missing Mike's funeral because I was in the hospital getting surgery. So that was a point in my life where everything up to that moment really was to optimize. And I had a goal, I had a vision, I was doing everything I knew to do to prepare for that. And then I won't say it was taken away, because I did, after the surgeries and rehab, I got cleared to play again by the NCAA, which effectively means that you're sound structurally. But psychologically, I just wasn't. I was in a place where that goal was man, is this not even, is it worth dying? But it shook me up a lot.
It changed your complete perspective the way you felt about the goal, right?
On everything, right? On top of the fact that I'd lost a friend, I saw him. And, for people who have been in a hospital, especially, I think, athletes, it's a really lonely place. And because we've been practicing inside, I played at the University of Wyoming. We had AstroTurf facility. During that week, I'd gone down. I got a big turf burn on my leg. And so I wound up in the hospital for about 24, probably 30 hours before surgery because they were trying to get the infection down. And so, sitting in a hospital bed with your foot pointed the wrong direction for 30 hours and really nobody wanting to come by and see you because, athletes just typically don't go visit hospitals because it's too much for money.
Felt like 150 hours.
Felt like 150 years almost, right? I feel like I aged. I feel like I didn't really know what I was about really anymore. On top of just being in massive pain and on morphine, it was really kind of like I don't know what to do to reset. And, thankfully, like I said, surgeon was amazing. Put me back together. I still have not had any problems physically with that injury, but I dropped out of school. I went with my brother and cousin to Alaska to be fishing guides, and didn't know my way forward. I just kind of dropped out of society almost altogether.
Sounds like a really reasonable, though, kind of mental reset. Anybody, not just like a football thing, even if you just like were in like a car accident and your best friend or someone you knew really close died, that could have been a shake.
Yeah. I don't think looking at it from where I am now, I think what I did was reasonable and probably actually healthy. I'm frankly glad I didn't play longer. Although I did have injuries and head injuries, they were not too severe, I guess you'd say. So I did wind up promising my mom that I would go back and get my undergraduate degree. So that kind of took me back to school. I wound up getting an undergrad at the University of Missouri in Parks, Rec, and Tourism. That led to being a park ranger in Colorado, which took me to graduate school at Arizona State University. And then I kind of worked back and forth with some government contracts, which, most people that work for the government are kind of in cubicles. I was in the field more. So I did law enforcement. I was like a river ranger, patrol ranger, kind of out in the field a lot. We mapped like off-road trails with a motorcycle crew that I used to run, which was a blast. Yeah, so like kind of a wide experience, mostly outdoors. But anyway, when I came to Arizona State University, I wound up in the recreation department, which is kind of a subset of social psychology, which I kind of learned what I wanted to learn about that in like the second day of class. And so I wound up picking up other classes, right? And wound up going through a degree program in geographic information systems, which is like computer-based mapping. I was kind of interested. I think certain people like maps. I did. And it was a lot of fun. It was kind of a revolutionary time that I didn't really understand the impact this technology was going to have on things, right? All the basis of our, navigation maps that we all take for granted now, at that time, we're not born yet. And we were, kind of in this like really dawn of a new technology that really going through that program put me in an incredible place to do work, right, in the real world and solve problems. So I wound up doing some consulting and wound up with a real estate company that did kind of specialty work in California and was a renewable energy developer out there doing site selection for wind farms and solar facilities all up and down the West Coast. So I remember really, really clearly, so this is like Cubicle, right, that we got a new office location that we were just opening up in the Inland Empire, which is like Riverside, California. We were kind of down by the old railroad depot down there. And we got this new space, and I was like, man, this is cool. We got windows all along, two sides of the building. It was just me and one other person in there who was kind of teaching me that industry. And, I put my desk right up. I was looking out the windows. I had a, okay view. Riverside's got some things to look at, right? Palm trees and whatnot, at least. But, Duncan, who was the man I was working with at the location, he's like, oh, this is great, we'll get all the furniture in here tomorrow. I was like, hey, I'm cool. I've got my little folding desk and my laptop, and I'll just kind of go through and keep making these maps that I'm making, and everything's good. Well, little did I know the next day that nice space with windows was going to be turned into just kind of cubicle hell almost, where none of the spaces had a view out of any of the windows.
Oh, they blocked it with the cubicle walls?
They blocked it with the cubicle walls. They put, printers and things and, just kind of common areas and by the windows. And I can understand in a certain way from a, corporate perspective why you do that, right? You don't want people just daydreaming and looking out the window and, it's like, if they want to take a break, go to the water cooler or whatever it might be, let them take a break and, see some green before they go back to look at the, blue background light of the computer they're working on. But anyway, long story, kind of wrapping that part up, I wound up kind of seeing the inside, so to speak, economically of the energy industry, which was fascinating to me. I loved what I was doing. I kind of felt the mission of, helping the environment, protecting it, having an alternative energy source that, whose day had come, so to speak, with renewables. But after I started looking at the economics of it, I was like, wait a second, like none of this adds up. Like this is all just subsidized. This is no different than, some of the ag subsidies I knew about. And I was like, well, the wind farms aren't producing what they could because there's cheaper energy over here. And, there was just a lot of muddledness of that whole thing. And I also kind of just felt a little dirty. Like I was getting paid like really, really good money. Like at the time I was 28, 29 maybe. Making, at times 25, even $30,000 a month. And,
wow.
And yeah.
Are you selling?
No, I was not. So what I got paid at the time, I was doing billable hours, right? And I worked a lot. I was working for weeks and, that starts to add up. And company appreciated me, the contracts we had, the people there, everything was on good terms, but I just I lost a sense of zeal, I guess, for feeling like I was really doing something to change much. On top of the fact that I kind of really I started to see that I didn't really understand what in the world was going on in the first place, right? Economics is like, in some way, we're trading value for value, and how do you do that in a way that makes sense? And so I did what any reasonable person would do, which is to quit a very lucrative career and go back to school.
Yep, that was very reasonable of you.
Very reasonable.
Friends and family were like, smart decision, Fletch.
Yeah. You've already, you're pushing 30, and now you're quitting a career. So I relocated. I lived in Dallas a little bit, David.
I didn't know you
lived here in the area. Yep, I was just off of like Knox, Henderson.
Oh yeah,
is that the intersection?
Uptown.
Yeah, Uptown. Really nice area. I was there. Was still doing a little consulting, which were paying the bills. And I went up going to Harvard for economics and sustainability. So the reason being, obviously, that I was kind of interested in that specifically. That was the thing that I kind of encountered in my career up to that point that was looking like I don't understand this at all, right? And what I kind of encountered in school was that they didn't offer any real solutions. I got into economics, and I knew from my social psychology background that people did not make sound decisions as far as like economic theory goes.
Yeah, a lot of theories assume that people are rational.
Rational economic theory. Yep.
Don't make rational decisions a lot of the time. We're actually very emotional. Nothing wrong with that. Just acknowledging that that's
the way it is. Right. Yeah. And so two kind of very specialty kind of economic kind of coursework or interests that I had were ecological economics and environmental economics. I get the two terms confused a little bit still. One of them has to do with the commons, right? So these are natural areas that we are somehow taking advantage of that are not accounted for in the price of a thing, right? Mm. And so, you can kind of see that in a pretty specific way. And really both of those fields have to do with getting the price of something right.
Mm. Mm.
But then I was conflicted with the fact that people don't make decisions based on price anyway. And so I'm like, well, all this is just BS. Like this, none of this makes any sense. You guys, like, I don't understand any of this. And it didn't work for me. So I did what any reasonable person at Harvard would do, who was still paying my bills, is I completely dropped out of Harvard again and quit the consulting job that I was doing, and I moved off-grid to Alaska and built my own cabin up there. So
this second time going to Alaska, right?
Second time. Well, yeah, I'd been up there just to, to go up and visit and things like that, but actually kind of relocating for work/life. Yeah, second time.
So now when you're in Alaska,
yeah.
Did you have a very lumberjack? Did you have like a big long beard and you unshaven?
That's when the beard and the hair started, David.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've kind of seen me over
to visualize
5 years. Yeah. So I'm flannel. I got 2 dogs. I built my own cabin.
Nice.
I could drive to the property, but then I couldn't drive to my cabin. I didn't cut a road into it or anything else.
As it should be. Right?
In the woods. Yeah. Yeah. So I had 10 acres with a little pond, small salmon run on the Kenai Peninsula, and a little generator that I ran on. And I just kind of picked up some side work. I did some, I still did have my laptop so I could go into town and plug in and send, files to and from people that I got small contracts with. And I just lived cheap. I didn't, I wanted to understand economics as like Thoreau did in Walden, which, it opened my eyes to a lot of how confused we all are with what we need to be doing, and kind of different norms.
I want to bring something up here that I think is really important, which is like how people define success. Money does enable a lot of things for success, but especially if you don't have kids, just being frugal and not needing a lot of money and living out in the woods like you did, that's successful. That's a successful action. You've set out to do something and you're doing it and you're pulling it off. And that is good enough to be successful. If that's all you ever want out of life, more power to you, right? I mean, you've essentially been liberated from any sort of need for a cubicle if that's what you continue to want to do.
Yeah.
Make a point. Please continue.
I'm glad you did, because I think that's a distinction that a lot of people don't have. We kind of get caught up in things and swept away with, different, pop culture and, the norms and standards we get, born into. And, without a kind of, I say radical change, I was still in the U.S., but, going from, I was living in Huntington Beach and then, going to Harvard and then just living in a cabin, with no anything, off-grid, literally off-grid. I was not connected to anything. It was a reset. It helped me see things really differently than I had up to that point. But, such is the case, I got a little bit restless and I'm like, what am I doing here? I can do this and I'm okay with it, but I'm not really influencing or impacting anyone. I'm not even communicating with anyone for the most part. And I still do kind of have this mission of like helping people be liberated, right? This has been a pretty common theme. So I realized that really addressing and what you brought up and really kind of shone a light on is that, living, frugally, yeah, my word, it's always fun, right? I'm going to come up with probably,
that's a new word.
Saying all right.
Made it.
It's going to be like a backwoods Shakespeare.
Frugally.
So, yeah.
Now,
making up words that are just nonsense and hell.
One of my new missions is to have that in Merriam-Webster in 5 years.
Okay. We can do it. So, just responsibly and when possible, making decisions more in line with economic theory, right? Rational economic theory, using better strategy with what we put our resources toward, whether they're financial or even just time, right? That's going to be one of the things that come up, I think, probably quite a bit on this podcast as we move along. So anyway, what I did was I moved, I kind of almost was like in a point of like flipping a coin as to where I was going to go. And it was kind of between Las Vegas, which is where I'd lived and worked for quite a while, and Phoenix, Arizona, right? Because I knew it, and being in Colorado, which is where my folks were at the time, it was a small town. There was no jobs. I actually did kind of go back there for a little while, and this was like 07, 08, and I applied for a dishwashing job at a restaurant for $8.75 an hour, and the manager, when I turned in the application, he said, thanks, but you're the 225th applicant for this job.
Oh. And
that was just kind of this sobering moment of like, oh geez, like this is where I am right now. Like I'd done some things that felt kind of big and important, but they turned out to, like, in a certain way, just be like undermined. If like a river, like a cut bank, it's like I was standing there and it felt kind of solid, but I knew there wasn't a foundation under it. And I knew it was dangerous. The longer I stayed there, the more dangerous it would be. So anyway, I decided, being in Colorado, that I needed to get to a place that had some more opportunities. That wound up being Phoenix for a few different reasons. But when I got down here, I lucked out and wound up finding a job with some people I knew from Vegas who just opened up a bar here in Phoenix down on, actually Tempe, Mill Avenue. And I was a bouncer, right? A glorified bouncer, head of security, right? Which meant I made $2 more an hour, but I didn't get tipped out. So, mopping up vomit, throwing drunk people out of bars, getting punched, and having to run money from the bar to the bank every night at 2 a.m., which is kind of dangerous. Was something that I had to do to pay the bills. But, in so doing, I kind of worked through and started picking up some side jobs in construction. And that led me into a home improvement, right? So I was doing energy efficient home improvements for people. I knew a lot of people had lost houses in the economic downturn. And
what year was this approximately?
This was between probably 2008 and 2010. My timeline's always, based on my memory, and I didn't go back and look at receipts or anything. But yeah, about 8 years ago, give or take, from when this is being recorded, maybe 9, maybe 10. I don't know, somewhere in there. I guess if I could do my math, it's now 2019, so that would have been maybe 10 years ago.
Somewhere in the second money.
It's when this is all kind of starting, but or this phase. The home improvement I did was specifically energy efficient for, the reason of just not burning more fuel than we need to, even though in Arizona we're mostly nuclear. It still just made sense economically for people who owned homes to save money on their energy bills and then roll that same payment into paying off their mortgage early. I could typically come into a house, middle income house in Phoenix, and save somebody enough money monthly where if they roll that into their mortgage, they'd save $80,000 or
nice.
Give or take $6,000 worth of investment.
Simple things,
simple
right?
Things, right? And I liked that, right? I didn't know much about marketing. I had done some things with sales before and done pretty well with it when I worked for Dollar Rent-A-Car as a counter agent for a while. But marketing was not my strong point at all. But I was okay doing that. It's kind of hard work. And in Phoenix, Arizona, in the summer, I was climbing around in attics and figuring out people's air conditioning ducts and their insulation. Like it was hot, hard work, and that's not a very healthy environment either. And but it was okay. It was paying the bills. I felt good and solid, about what I was doing, which was at not a local level, at an individual level, right? I wanted to help every individual who worked with me actually achieve a vision they have for themselves that everybody can be happy about. But as things often do, I was running a pretty lean operation. I didn't have money in the bank, and I took a job with the lady down in Tombstone, Arizona, doing a remodel on her house, and for whatever reason, I wound up, she asked if that was the best price I could give, and I kept going back and forth, and it got tighter and tighter and tighter until it was like, man, it's not even worth doing this. But I care about this person, and I care about this mission enough that I'll go do this job, even though I'm really not going to make any money on it. And went and did that, and the job turned into a nightmare, right? I'd underbid it to begin with. The person who'd framed up their house originally, none of their stuff was square or plumb. And what we wound up having to do was almost like reframe their whole second floor of the house. And it just turned into a nightmare. So by the time that was done, after materials were paid for and 2 weeks of my life gone, I think I came back with maybe $300 in my pocket.
Wow.
Which was like, well, okay, I just wasted that whole section, but at least it's done. Well, it wasn't done, right? She wound up going back to the ROC and saying, well, this wasn't done right. This wasn't done right. And I thought I had a kind of a verbal agreement. It's like, hey, like this thing is like, we're going to get it done. Okay. But with the price we gave you, it just doesn't work. So, anyway, long story wrapping up, that turned into getting a hit back from the registry of contractors that would attach to the bonding on the construction company, which effectively meant I had to come out of pocket for $10,000.
Oh my God.
To make it right, or whatever you talk about. She was involved with government down there, and she'd gone to the news and turned into like this little hoopla. But that was all the money I
got. What you, I guess it shows you, you try to help somebody sometimes.
Sometimes, and we have some common language that'll come out, but like offers and being very clear about them. We got to be really explicit with that stuff. So anyway,
willing to draw your lines and not compromise with, because often the people that are asking for you to compromise are going to be the worst customers.
Yeah. And really just taking care of yourself first too, right? On the plane, you put an oxygen mask. Yeah.
Even if you don't have like a family and kids, taking there's kind of an enlightened self-interest that benefits everybody. It doesn't. There's a saying that I like. It's like one way to help out the poor is to not become one of them. And by giving up self, you're not really helping anybody. Maybe short term you are, but I think ultimately there's a lot of cases that are going to be like this, where both are at a loss. you both kind of
one of us were happy with the solution, right. So it's like nobody won, right? We both lost. So between that time that job got done and when this whole it wasn't like a lawsuit, it was just like a callback type of thing. Between those times, I actually had gotten married, right? And you've been married for a couple months, and then the $10,000 came out of the account to cover the expenses and make everything right. And then I was out climbing around in attics doing kind of what I do, which was kind of assess people's houses. I had a thermal camera and blower door where I depressurize houses and measure leakage and all that type of thing. But I was climbing around in an attic out on the west side of the Phoenix metro area, and I got a call from Natalie, my wife, who was then pregnant, right? Letting me know that the utility company had turned our water off. And that, she knew I'd figure out a way to make it okay, but, she had a 6-year-old daughter when I met and married them. So she wanted to give me a heads up because I needed to talk to Matea and tell her why she couldn't take a shower that night. And that was like this kind of just, again, like this, not a wake up call, but just like this, like everything just comes way more clearly into view of like the details that matter. And, I'd been, in certain ways, I look back at a lot of this and like I was selfish with things that I had to do. And, things I thought were important that I still believe are important, but it was like, but I had to do what I had to do. Anyway, the drive back across town in my 1972 International Travelall, I certainly didn't push the gas pedal, right? I wanted to get home any faster than I absolutely had to. But anyway, got through that and wound up. I had an old laptop that the battery didn't work in it, and we didn't have internet at the house. And so I woke up kind of the next day and walked over to Starbucks, which is about a quarter mile from our house here, and jumped on their internet connection and was like, I've got to figure out what to do to market my business better, right? Or my offer. Like I didn't understand the word offer, but like market my business was kind of how I was looking at it. And wound up watching a couple people that we both know in common, Greg Morrison and Mike Long, who were talking about, kind of the revolution that was occurring online with search engines being able to, keywords and ranking and all this thing. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense, right? I built what I thought was a website for my business, but nobody ever found it, right? I didn't understand how, traffic, I'm air quoting right now, even though you can't see me, but like, I didn't understand how people really use the internet. And, it sounded great. And I was like, yeah, I want to do this. But the point was I'm broke.
So I really like, I try to think of these sort of like as bounce moments. So you can imagine a ball bouncing, and you kind of crash. But get back up off the floor. It sounds like this was like, I want to get the timing of this right. So you had this water turned off, and then the next morning you went to do research and you found like Greg Morrison and Mike Long, like the day. Oh, wow. Okay. I don't think you realize how lucky you are.
My own tears for very long. I didn't do that.
I just want to point out real quick how long from my research to starting things to where I got to that point. That was a much longer process. If you look at it, I was probably a 4 or 5 year process.
Mine was like a 12-hour process.
Yeah, like they weren't there at the beginning. Let's put it that way when I started. But so I think you're very fortunate. There is a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people looking to really help people, and there's a lot of people looking just to see how much money they can make and run. And there's a lot of people looking to kind of regurgitate theory, regurgitate what they think, what sounds good, or what someone else told them was good, and then they're trying to sell that, which is kind of a middle ground. I don't think it's not nearly as bad. It's trying to like scam people, but it's also a dishonest way, I think, or not valuable at least. So please continue.
I couldn't agree more, especially from like this perspective, having been kind of in digital marketing and internet marketing for 5, 6, almost 6 years now. I lucked out. That was one of the first things I came across. I wish I could remember how I actually found it, but divine providence, God, luck, whatever you want to call it. I could have wound up a lot worse off.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, the issue was it was a training program. It wasn't cheap, but it was what I felt was right, and I had to figure out a way to come up with money. So that old 1960 or 72 international travel all I had was paid for, and I had some tools that were paid for, and so I wound up going out effectively selling the truck and some tools to pay for that training program.
Now let me ask you this. Did you talk about this with your new wife that is pregnant, or did you just do it?
I did not even I did not discuss anything at that point.
When I come to this moment in my story, I want you to ask me the same question.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
I have a feeling that this is something that a lot of people will talk about as we have guests on and things like that.
Sometimes you have a vision and you don't have the time. There's not enough time to catch the train to convince someone else to get on the train. You have to get on the train yourself.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. Anyway, please continue.
I like the way you put that. So anyway, at that point I have to make it work, right? There's no other way to go about doing this. And so I'll kind of spare the details on exactly what I did there, but it was a lot of hustling. And I say hustling, not like I'm a fast talker or I was out like making these crazy deals, but I guess I would say I leveraged the relationships I had with people.
Worked hard.
And
really,
I worked hard, right? I put in hours and I tried to be smart, but at a certain point, done is done. And I just needed to get some money in the bank so I could get some stuff turned back on and build some momentum and build some experience and this and that and the other. So getting the training, first thing I did was apply to my construction business. I had no intention of becoming an internet marketer or information marketer, none of that stuff, right? I just wanted to have a construction business that was solvent, and I wasn't squeezed and being pressed to take jobs that didn't pay me what they needed to pay me. And so kind of through that kind of experience, I wound up ranking my construction company, a couple different sites. I built a bunch more sites that were generating leads or phone calls from my company on for things that I did, right? Sealing people's ductwork, installing or repairing insulation. Solar panels were kind of in that same little vertical, and at the time they were really kind of hot here in Arizona. So I wound up going from probably having 3 phone calls a month kind of before the training to booking 3 jobs a day.
Wow.
Within 90 days.
Very nice. Well done.
And for, kind of a solo construction / consultant guy, that was way more than I could stay on top of. And so I wound up then kind of being like, hey, I'm working with these subcontractors already. That means they want work from me. Why don't I just, maybe figure out a way? Because I kind of figured out how to do like phone numbers on websites, multiple phone numbers. We call them like call tracking phone numbers.
Yeah.
And so they were all just forwarding my cell phone. I was like, well, I'll just forward this to you, Darwin, or Reza, or whoever I was working with. And, that's where this huge bump in income has come from for you guys, right? You're way busier with me now. It's from these phone calls, right? So I knew the economics of the business as far as the accounting goes. I knew how much
money they made and how much
money they made, how much money I made.
Priceless.
And so I could figure out what a phone call would be worth based on the percentage of phone calls that turned into jobs, right? 1 out of every 3 or 4 did. You're gonna make $1,000. Is it worth paying $250 for that? Yes, it is. Okay, so then we kind of back out those numbers, and I said, okay, so here's the price, right? And everybody was like, yeah, this sounds great. We're gonna make more money. You're gonna make less, like money overall, but you don't have to be in the field anymore, which will let you scale. And yeah, that turned into a really cool situation.
So you took that, just scaled it. You just took it and you repeated. You continued to work hard, right? You built more of that, right?
Yeah. It was I would say organic, right? I wasn't sitting around and like contriving, coming up with these grand schemes. They were just it was the results that came from building,
right? Like that.
And I like that kind of concept. Because what happened then, one of the subs that I was working with had been depositing just way more money in their account with a credit union than kind of back up. So I was selling leads to these subcontractors. They were like, well, where are these coming from? Like, because we can scale our business, right? We've got field managers and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, it's coming from search engine optimization, right? Ranking for keywords on Google and Bing and Yahoo. And people are looking for insulation contractor. They find my website, and then we get the phone calls, right? And so they're like, well, could you do that for our websites too? Like, could we pay you just like a fee? I was like, well, that sounds pretty good to me, right? I want to make more money, and I know
still not working in an attic.
Still not in an attic. I got the pictures, but I don't have to go up there anymore. So yeah, so then that turned out to be what kind of I guess would be SEO clients, we call them, that were paying me money monthly to rank their websites on Google. So then, kind of jumping back to where I was, one of those contractors had an account with a credit union and was depositing just a lot more money, like probably, I would estimate like 10x more than they had been depositing up to that point, and a year earlier, right? Because things in home improvement are really seasonal. Like, people tend to do certain types of work, certain times of the year. Anyway, so their account manager noticed it and said, hey, what's going on? Like, you guys are obviously doing well. What did you change in your business?
Oh, I see where this is going, I think.
And yeah. And so
pointed to you. And you. Wow.
Yeah, Darwin was like, hey, it was
so that got you more clients, and this was a business account manager, so they had a whole host.
So this is like a 30 location credit union in the Phoenix metro area. And they had some places in Tucson too, but they wanted to their kind of lucrative thing that they wanted to get more clients for was small business loan, and so they wanted to rank in these 30 locations for small business loan. I was like, well, I haven't ever done something like this before, but in theory, this sounds like something I could do. So, before I had a website, before I had an agency or anything like that, I wound up with a client with 30 locations that was paying, pretty decent money. I didn't know how to price or anything else, but I kind of knew what it would cost me to do that. And yeah, and that kind of was like the first step toward, like, looking at this as not just really a career, but like even more than a career potentially. Like people needed to be found online just because that's where people are shopping. Right?
When was this? So we got
this was all in like 2013.
So like how much time from the bounce moment, from the time where your water was cut off to the credit union?
That was 6 months. 7 months.
And then I also want to focus in on quick, like, when was the moment or do you remember kind of the moment you kind of stopped and like, oh my God, I don't ever need to go in an attic again, or let me rephrase that. Let me be more clear. The chances that I'll ever need to go into an attic again are basically nothing.
I kind of, the reason that kind of the backstory, I think, may be important or enlightening on that question is that I had to fundamentally change what I was doing with my life so many times that I wasn't ever cutting myself off from that. Because if you kind of remember, like I just wanted a construction company that was going to work. I was happy to go back to be to being a construction guy that was having enough phone calls. Yeah. Okay. And so, I didn't hate the work because I really liked fixing people's houses. I really like fixing things properly, right? And if you haven't been in your attic, it's usually a mess.
I have. So wait, let me ask a different question then. Okay. When was the moment and that you realized, holy crap, I'm gonna have all the business I ever want?
Yeah. That helps me kind of frame that up. So, I had deposited over $10,000 that all came from me not climbing in attics, and was able to take my pregnant wife and 6-year-old to Disneyland.
Oh, nice.
And actually spend money. I won't say freely. Right. But I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I hope this goes through.
Not like a rock star, but also not.
But, I could buy an ice cream cone, right?
Yeah.
Buy Mickey Mouse ears for, my daughter. Like things like that. Just stuff that I think it's easy to take for granted if you're in a situation where you got money, but it's pretty easy to be grateful for it.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're coming from and
so
what that
when
perspective
was this
looks like.
Compared to the bounce moment?
Yeah, that was probably maybe 5-6 months. That was in the summer of 2013.
When did you tell your wife that you had spent? When did she finally learn that you'd spent? I know that the program.
Well, she She, I told her within a week or two.
Oh, okay.
She's like, yeah, it wasn't.
Right. It's not like you were hiding it. Just so much like it's a decision.
It was just like
already made.
She had her stuff. She was working still. She was pregnant. I didn't want to, put any undue stress on her. I was like, after I bought, my routines changed. Right. I was still getting a little bit of work and construction. But yeah, I was over at Starbucks all the time with my laptop every morning. And she's like, what's this about? And I was like, well,
where'd the truck go?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, and anyway, she noticed, or I knew that she would notice. I don't remember exactly all the details in there, but it was pretty quick after.
Cool.
After that.
Well,
he was like, well, go for it. Like,
there's a lot in there that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get into another podcast into more sort of like the after and like transition.
Sure.
I think it was sort of, I wanted to focus, I thought it would be useful to focus on kind of prior to the moment, the moment where you kind of had the water moment, and then like the immediate steps afterward, sort of like what it felt like. I think that was a pretty quick transition, but at the same time, I think a lot of people, they see sort of like the overnight success and they think it only took you 6 months, but you had all this preparation, all this life experience that happened beforehand, this understanding of economics, and then understanding of the industry that you ended up making your initial like money on that was super important to your success. So I think it's important for people to not like measure like this is how long it's going to take me or else I'm a failure.
No,
because everybody has their own path and there's their own strengths. All the best people that I know that have made good livings in our industry all have a unique path, and they all have different whys and what bounce moments that I would like to think. Not everybody has those, but I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, I would agree. I've as I've been involved, kind of teaching and training in this industry now for a while, and so because of that, I've gotten to hear a lot of people's kind of stories, and I would second, really everything you said. Like everybody's path is so individual, and even saying, spend a day in my shoes or a year in my shoes, and you'd understand. it's not sufficient, because you've got all the psychology of things, and then you've got, personal talents, things like that all come into play.
Yeah.
And so, being able to boil things down to, replicatable tactics and understanding strategy, right?
Principles.
Understanding why people make decisions, and it's not just other people, it's us too.
Yep.
Right? You can put yourself in a position where I'm going to make better decisions, or decisions that have less downside, more upside.
Well,
right?
yeah, we'll talk about that, because that is really important. Understanding not just how other people make decisions, how you make your own decisions. I think that's going to be something, as we talk about, that a lot of people don't look to get, but that they really need.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm going to transition into my story. Unless do you have some final thoughts?
Man.
Okay.
I know I ate up a lot of time, but
no, that's fine. It was good.
Yeah.
It's very useful, and I learned a lot, and it was very interesting. So I think people like to hear the stories, and it's just life is, it's so different for everybody. But then there's some threads that go similar. And I think I'll point out some of those. I think my story is pretty different than yours in a lot of ways. I was a computer geek growing up, but I never really talked about this. I did want to be in the NBA when I was like a teenager. I played a lot of basketball. I'd like to think I was pretty good at it, but I kind of went more of the geek path. I learned to play Magic the Gathering, which is sort of a connection I have with some other people, and I really, really geeked out on that. And I was more interested in like kind of math, science, computers. Ultimately, I kind of felt like I had to make a choice, and that was the choice that I made. Actually left high school a couple years early to go to like a math and science academy, and which is what ultimately led me to being an engineer and getting an engineering degree, 2 engineering degrees, and then.
Did you go to school, college in Texas?
Yeah, I went to. So the academy is on University of North Texas campus. I graduated from University of Texas at Austin. That was my bachelor's degree, and then I graduated with a master's degree in industrial engineering at Georgia Tech. And one thing that I think that I've heard some people say this, that like, if you have an education in our industry and you're trying to like sell products, you're trying to make it so that make it seem like everybody can do it. Like, so you're trying to make it seem like you're dumber than you are. I don't know if that's completely accurate. I think that a lot of the technical stuff that I have learned hasn't really directly helped me. In fact, sometimes it hinders you. And so it's sort of a mixed bag. There are some kind of geeky things. I do use the computer very quickly, and that is useful. If you are hunting and pecking and you don't know how to use Windows or basic, Mac features, then that's going to be an issue. But ultimately, I don't think that is like going to make or break. So yeah, I did go to school in Texas.
Now, so I want to ask one more question on what you just explained. You said sometimes you think it actually hinders you. Could you kind of extrapolate on that a little bit, or
yeah? Well, so when you're trying to make money online, I think a good analogy is to kind of look back at like the late 90s, when everyone who worked on the internet was a webmaster, and so it was just pretty much one job. You were a webmaster, and you did everything on the internet. But now you look at today, and like all the different potential positions that you can have, I don't even know them all. All the different niches. You can't just be a webmaster and do everything on the internet. And there's a tendency when you're a computer geek to want to do everything, to want to learn everything, all the technical stuff, as opposed to finding people. There's so many cases. I had I think it was a couple different things kind of helped tip me over the edge, where I would like struggle to do something, and I'd get it done, but it would take a really long time, and it would be done sort of mediocre. And then I would go and next time I would like hire somebody, and it would get done faster, for much less headache and better. And so there's no one who can do everything that there is on it. And nor should you. And so I think that in that way, it can be a hindrance to think, if you're a programmer, should you program your own website? Should you program the PHP and the HTML of your own website? Well, probably not if you're a business owner. You're looking at this, I think, perspective that both of us essentially try to take as a business owner and an entrepreneur. You should not be doing everything in your business. Maybe you can do it once or twice to kind of understand the process, so you can hire someone, but you do it with the intention of understanding it at a high level, and not so that you can continue to do it in an ongoing.
I like that. Yeah, that what you just said, I think we'll probably come back to at some point. But kind of when you said should you actually do that in your business, I almost wanted to say, and the only time you should is if it is your business.
Yeah,
right? That's the thing you do. And I think we'll explore that a little bit. But that might be kind of a way to look at what you're doing currently with your life and how you spend your time.
I totally agree. You can't. There's plenty of business case studies of this where you can't outsource everything. You have to have sort of like a core competency to a certain degree. Almost like outsourcing is your competency. So it's not like I don't do anything in my business, but understanding that you definitely shouldn't be doing and need to be paying other people to do things, and it's going to work out better for you. It's going to be better than if you try to wear all the hats.
Right. Cool. Well, yeah, continue.
Yeah.
No, I kind of derailed there, but that was helpful.
So after I graduated from with my bachelor's degree, I knew I didn't want to go work. And I was actually in mechanical engineering and didn't really want to be a mechanical engineer. And I liked industrial engineering a lot more, so I went into industrial engineering. And then I got a job out of that working for Texas Instruments, industrial engineer. And I worked for them for about 6.5 years. And I felt like I was getting dumber every year. The stuff that I was doing was not something that like so when you go to college, there's a completely different thing from when you're in college and you're studying something and it's interesting and you're learning about it, and then going and practicing in the field. The tasks that I do, there's a lot of tasks that I could have done in high school. 98% of it. Now, there's certain understandings that I have, like in terms of data and information, that I probably wouldn't have had in high school, but probably could have learned really quickly. And so I think that, if someone thinks, oh, well, David, you're a computer geek, I can't do what you did. Fletch, were you a computer geek?
No. I was always curious. I like taking things apart, but if I would have been, I probably could have figured out how to get the battery to work in my laptop.
I think that there's, and I'm going to address this real soon. There's sort of this identity that people have, and I think kind of letting go of your identity of what you're good at and what you're not good at. If you're generally healthy and you have a functional brain, you can learn just about anything. Humans are super, super adaptable. And when you take that approach of I'm not good at it, you change your mindset from I'm not good at something to I don't know how to do this yet. I'm not good at it now. That is something.
Using the term like I am. Oof. Yeah. Boy, you're going to limit things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could kind of expand on that while I go get my door real quick.
Yeah, no problem. So, one of the things David kind of brought attention to is how limiting it can be to say, like, I am, right? Whatever follows that. Whether you say, I am an incredible leader, well, you're already defining yourself as not being an incredible leader, which means you're going to be harder to relate. You're going to have a harder time relating to people who are not leaders, right? If you're drawing that distinction, right? And it works the other way too, to say I am not great at computers, or you're just saying that's what I am, and it's going to be like permanent. Yeah. Right? I am is like permanent.
Right? It's okay to, I think it's okay to say like I'm not great at computers, as long as you understand that it doesn't mean that you can't ever be great at computers. In fact, it's okay to acknowledge that where you are right now. Just as long as you're not like, well, and that's that. I'm never going to be able to use a computer. I'm never going to be able to rank a website. I'm never going to be able to build a website. So yeah, I'm going to come back to that. So, I was working for TI, which I think is a good company. I had the kind of the polar opposite experience, like a really great boss. And I also had like a really bad boss. Someone who I would say, and I hope this person isn't listening, but it is what it is, who I would say was, as the Dilbert principle was promoted to this person's level of competence. They were really good at kind of being the technical person, and then once upon promotion, had no idea how to manage people. And part of this was, I'm not saying this was all on them. I was not really ready to like fully, my mental part, my mindset was, I probably could have done a whole lot better at TI had I had the right mindset, which I did kind of off and on. And part of that was consistency. And I have this really funny thing. There was this one year where it was very like office space. Like I was not working a whole lot. Thursday afternoons were nap Thursdays. Go home and have lunch and go take a big nap. And I got a big raise at the end of the year. And then there was another year where I created a system. I really was like, okay, I want to do something awesome for this company. Okay, I felt like I really wanted to contribute, and then I could. And there was this metric. Let me actually take a step back. So in basically Texas Instruments, the core of where they make their money, at least at the time, and probably still now, is they actually, it's not the calculators, even though that's where a lot of people know about them. That's a very small percentage of the business. They make the processors that go into a lot of things, probably in a lot of people's phones. And this is a very, very complex process that requires like this big giant room that's maybe like 4 or 5 football fields in size, and it's got the building itself is really cheap compared to it's about $1 to $10 billion worth of tools that go into it. And these are tools that are maybe the size of like a small car or bigger, or even maybe a little bit smaller. And you've got these silicon kind of discs that are grouped together in like, I think I want to say 25 or 50, and they go through this 100 to, let's say about 100 to 1,000 step process. Okay. And it's very expensive. And my job was to kind of work on it, that process being more efficient. So this was something where they would measure sort of like the productivity of each tool. So let's say there's 500 tools. These are the tools, these are the things. So at a certain step, it's supposed to do this to all the disks. They're called wafers. Okay. And about 50%, roughly, maybe 40%, I can't remember the exact number. They had this, so there was a metric that they used to determine like uptime, essentially how much time, what percentage of the time is this tool available for use? And for about 40%, 50% maybe tops of the tools, the measurement that they were using to determine that number was just wrong. It was a complex tool, and it sort of had like different kind of chambers. And the way they were measuring it, the number was just kind of like a fuzzy. It was just like a made-up number. It was just like, yeah. I mean, if it was like down 100% of the time, then it was accurate, or if it was up 100% of the time, then it was accurate. But anywhere in between, it could say 40, and it could have actually been 70, and vice versa. And so I went to solve this, and you think a big company would have this solved. And I came up with what I thought was a pretty good solution. It was kind of just like fixing it kind of like one group at a time. And I had like one stumbling block where like I had like something where I said I was going to get this done, but I wasn't able to get it done for various reasons. And I got like a really big slap on the wrist. And this was just sort of like, man, like this is one of the critical moments where, man, this is just terrible. And part of this was I think my boss at the time, but another part of it was just, this boss was not alone in this kind of thinking of like, you can't make any mistakes. Like you can't, like there's never a potential for something to go wrong, or else you're bad at your job. And then I also had created, I don't remember if this was shortly before or shortly after, I created a system that essentially saves that business unit about $500,000 a year by making something more efficient. I believe they're still using this today. And at the end of that year, where I created that awesome thing, I got a really low raise because there was like a disagreement, a misunderstanding between me and my bosses. So I want to contrast that with my office space year, getting a big raise, and I remember having sort of this moment being like, this is just messed up. Like this is not connected to my performance, and I didn't like that. That didn't make me happy. Going into Texas Instruments, and this is not like Texas Instrument is a big company, and there are certainly going to be some business units. I know that it is a lot more tied. I think the specific unit that I was in, it was a little bit harder, and the specific job that I had. And I also think Texas Instruments, not the best company at utilizing industrial engineers. So, and then some of it was also on me. I was very geeky, and I'm not a very good social communicator. My social skills were probably not that good. my political skills were definitely not good. I think that at all. And so, this was not all these factors coming together. And I had this moment. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was sort of like, I remember when it was. So I then had I knew I wanted to quit my job, but it took me many years to kind of get to the point to where I felt like I really could. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did kind of settle on internet, and because I had built my own websites many years before, I hadn't actually made any money with it, but I thought, geeky, I love the internet, I love computers, I love the technology, and so I thought that would be a good path, but I didn't really know what to do. I had no idea. I didn't even know whether or not I wanted to rank things or whatever. And I did start to do some stuff on the side, but after I had my first kid was born, and I was like working this job that I didn't really like. It wasn't like working in a coal mine, but it was definitely not good, and I didn't like it. I wasn't happy there. And I'm going home, and you have a newborn, doing all this work. Time to go to sleep. You just go from like washing dishes and cleaning and doing stuff to crashing and then waking up and redoing it. And it just felt like this Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the hill over and over again. And I thought, man, there's got to be a better way. And then I also thought, if in 20 years I'm still working in this job, it's my own fault. I can't blame anyone but myself. Even if, let's assume that my boss was the worst boss in history, and that TI is the worst possible company in the world, which I'm definitely not saying either one of those things. But let's assume, for the sake of argument, then it's still my own fault. It's my life, and I get to choose, even with these major constraints. Because when you have kids, like your expenses go 10x, and your obligations. Like I'd be fine if it was just me. I could sleep on a cot in a single room as long as I got a restroom and a shower, then I'll be fine. But with kids, obviously, it's different.
No, I like what you said. It's my life, and I get to choose.
Yeah, and I've always had kind of an
concept
spirit. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I set out to try to figure this out, and it took me. I was working this on the side for 3 or 4 years, and I did find some programs, get some rankings and some traffic and some money. Nothing real significant. So after my second child was born, about 3 years after the first one, I waited until soon after, like, our yearly bonus was coming. I think it was like February 15th. And then I went ahead and quit. And I was making about $1,000 a month on the side, and which is, great, although I was spending it all back to try to kind of build business and learn things. And I had bought a bunch of products, and I was actually ranking for decent things like stock market for beginners, getting a lot of traffic, getting like 14,000 visitors a month at peak, which in that niche, that should be worth a whole lot more than $1,000 a month. But I didn't really know. I was kind of studying that. But then, like, maybe 6 weeks after I quit my job, that site got hugely Google slapped, and my income basically went. And while I did have savings, and my wife does work, it was not enough. So I was burning through my savings quite rapidly. And I kind of had to make a decision. I had a few things going for me. I understood sort of the economics of focus. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to pick a path, and I'm just going to hit it as hard as I can until it works, and not giving up. And so I kind of picked client SEO for that, and which was kind of strange to pick, considering I did not have a positive view of salespeople. I was not a salesperson. I had a friend tell me several years later that, like, if I had told him before that I was going to make money by convincing people to buy stuff, that he'd tell me I was crazy. I think there's kind of this, everybody thinks when they say, if I'm in sales, they envision, at least I did, they envision like a used car salesperson saying, okay, let me tell you this, I'm gonna buy this, and you're gonna get this, and I'm gonna blah, 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 stuff like that. And the truth is, well, there are some people like that. That's not good sales. I don't think that even really works anymore. Well, there's certainly some cheesy sales tactics out there that work used. It's not really the whole of it. You don't need it. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, especially that, like what you kind of brought attention to, that you decided that a certain goal or path was going to be the path, even though there were very specific things along that path that you kind of already identified you didn't like or want to do, or kind of already had maybe an impression that you weren't, naturally gifted or good at from the concept of what everybody else would believe.
Yeah,
right?
and it was important. And so actually I did do what I think that almost everyone, maybe there's a few small percentage of people that don't need to do this, but needs to work on kind of their mental, their mindset, and what the things that are going through their brain. And so I did go aggressively to work on that because I recognized this was a big shift. And I put myself in a lot of uncomfortable. I'm an introvert, kind of I think I'm on the border, but overall generally introvert and stay in front of my computer. And so I did a lot of stuff that wasn't that. And I also, I had to identify to change my own identity in a way in terms of who I thought I was. And I could still be kind of a computer geek, but I also needed to be able to sell in order to take the path. And maybe it was the best choice, maybe it wasn't. It is what it is. I made the choice and decided to. It took a lot of personal development type stuff. And one of the things I saw an article just recently about the two common characteristics among all self-made millionaires is perseverance and another word that was very similar to perseverance. I don't remember what it was, but basically just sticking to it and really being resilient. I think it was resilient and perseverance, which I consider to be kind of synonyms. And so that helped a lot. Just really Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, Darren Hardy, and several others in that industry that I spent a lot of time working on my brain, working on my mindset, and that helped a lot. But it wasn't good enough because you still do need, as you said to me just recently, you said, there's two parts to this. You have the technical, which is what most people are out there looking for, and then you have the mental, which I think less people are looking for to a lesser degree, but still looking for. And I still needed the technical, and the technical wasn't really working very well for me. It was okay, but I bought into a program that was more focused on the sales and not really focused on the technical. And I still wanted to learn the technical, and I thought it was still important. You're making a promise to deliver something, and you need to be able to deliver it. And if you can outsource that to someone and it works, then that's fine. But I was outsourcing to someone that they were recommending, and it wasn't working. And as a result, I wasn't confident, and I wasn't able to make high ticket sales, which you kind of need. You can't really survive off of $200-300 per month clients. That's not good enough. And I needed something better. And that's when I finally stumbled upon the same people that you stumbled upon, Greg Morrison specifically. And I had bought a bunch of other products before then. And it was pretty clear right from the beginning that he was different. And that he was, just look for somebody that really, really was out there to really genuinely help. And I had a moment when this was actually, so it was about, let's say it was March 1st-ish when I left my job. And this was late November, right around Thanksgiving, when I kind of made the decision to go ahead and purchase the more expensive program. And I was almost out of cash. And I definitely did not tell my wife right away because I know that she would have been like, what are you doing, you idiot? You're spending $2,000.
We're already running low.
Right, you're already running low.
Take more.
Actually,
was this the end of 2012 or
end of 2012? And she was already the whole time she was trying to bug me. Well, not at first, but as it became clear that I was about to run out of my ability to help family financially, she more and more would be like, go get a job again, basically, which I don't blame her for. She has a baby. She has basically a 3-year-old and a newborn, and she wants to take care of them. Understandable. We actually had a nanny who was working full time for us. And come January 1st, while I had just joined the program and it was starting to see some, I was getting into it. I was out of money, and she was going to have to provide all the money, and so we had to fire our nanny, and I became a part-time nanny, and then I was working.
That became your job.
Yeah, but I was like part-time nanny, part-time on my business, and the calls from my spouse to get a job increased. Again, understandably, and I resisted. And fortunately, things started to kick in. Started to get some very good signals of in like March, and then in April it got better, and then by summer of 2013, I was able to provide a good level. And so it was about, I want to say about 6 months after I found the right people, right information, to where I really was able to do a lot. But it was more like a year and a half ish after I quit. And so that was. I think that I had given myself like 1 to 2 years. I had right after I quit my job. It was spring, and I was sitting in the backyard watching kids play, and it was beautiful outside. And I kind of made like a mental note, like in this time, I kind of looked forward 2 years, and I said, 2 years, I'm gonna have figured this out. I believed in myself. I believed that I could learn and I could figure it out. I just tested it, learned and tested and learned and tested and did it. And it did. And fortunately, because I would have hated to go back, and it'd be hard to go back to be an engineer or something when you're gone on yourself. You're not nearly as hireable. And I didn't want to do it. So I don't even know what I would have done. And so, that's a tough thing. That's kind of my story. And so, basically ever since then, well, it hasn't been all up. I have had ups and downs. I have never regretted quitting my job, and I've never really felt like I've ever really had to get a job since then, since like summer of 2013. And I can remember, I have a moment where I remember it was the summer of 2013. And I was walking through the hallway in my office, and I was just kind of like, popped my fists in the air, and I was just like, wait, I did it. I was just sort of like, I bet on myself, and I won. And I was so happy. And not that I can just like stop working from that point, because there is work, and there's nobody has like a magic red button, but I knew that this was something that there was a period where I was starting to question it towards the mid to late part of 2012, when I was not able to get like clients that were at the level that really needed to be able to support, that was reasonable for me to support myself. I was starting to think, man, I just like chosen completely wrong. And so to get to the point where even for any significant period of time, right, it was working. It's just mind blowing. So happy. Yeah.
That like when you like ups and downs, obviously, right? We look at a lot of times because we feel like this is odd. Like some people are like really like present, right? And so it's like, oh, I'm going down right now. But then in general, in their whole life, they're not present at all, because they're always thinking about, like, the only way you can understand if you're going down is by kind of comparing it to the past in a certain way. So pumping your like hands, like it in a certain way, no matter where you are, you can be happy, right? Because
agreed.
At the end of the road for all of us is we're going to die. And so
I have plans.
You gotta avoid that in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's something that we'll get more into, because it affects so much, kind of our outlook on things, our the mental side, as you talked about, our ability to take action. Confidence really comes into play as far as how well you communicate your stuff, how much you value your own stuff, which to me is the number one consideration of whether you can sell or not. If you really value your own stuff, it's going to be easy to sell. And
I think an important thing for people out there who are like, well, I don't want to learn sales. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there. First of all, you already have to. You have to influence people in your life. Even if you're an engineer, unless you go and build a cabin in Alaska, then you don't need to know any sales.
Well, you still got to influence yourself to stay.
Oh, that's a very good point. I did not think about that. But I think that it's, I think that all the downs that I would have had, and most of the issues, most of the things that I needed to work on were not the technical side. They were the mental side. of working on my brain, and I still have to do like kind of regular work. I think to look at it sort of like working out. Like if you're really overweight, really unfit, in order to get fit, you gotta work harder than you would if you're fit to maintain it. But once you get fit, you still have to maintain it. And so I do stuff every day to work on my brain, my mind, to persuade myself to.
Yeah, I think that's important. That kind of maintenance concept. We'll probably tease that out even more and more to help ourselves and help other folks understand kind of, because here's the thing: you're already doing all of these things in your life. In just being able to understand what you're actually already are doing. Mm-hmm. Well, already are doing.
Already are.
There's another word for it. Yeah. Anyway, the being able to understand that all the stuff that we're probably going to be talking about, everyone that listens is going to have already been doing in one way or another, but may just be applying it wrong, may not be understanding how important it is, may not be able to understand how to understand how important it is, right?
Yeah.
And those are things that I think will really help a lot of people out, because they help me out.
Yeah.
Right. I know while I'm unique, I'm also a lot of the things that I've gone through are similar to what other people experience.
I agree.
Right.
And I think that when you pointed that out, when we were talking about making this podcast, like, a lot of people, they focus just on the technical, but if you don't have the mental down, the technical doesn't matter at all. Yes, you still do need a certain technical proficiency. But with you won't even be able to get to technical proficiency if you don't have sort of the mental part of it down. About both. And I know I personally had to go through a lot of that, a lot of mindset. My attitude was like I just wasn't ready to do what I needed. But okay, so I think in the next episode, so in our second episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about this mental, because we both think it's super important, and I think a lot of other people would agree with us. So
I'm excited for this day.
Yeah, me too. And so if you would like to get more information and learn more about how we have liberated ourselves from the cubicle forever, then tune into the next episode. Where we go more into the mental aspects of it. So, my name's David Hood and
Joshua Fletcher, or as you can call me, Fletch.
And we'll see you on the other side.
Take care, guys.